Hello my friends and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Well, the Russians seem to react to whatever the Ukrainians said a few days ago, and what they said is that they would not negotiate with Vladimir Putin. They want to negotiate with the next president of Russia. Now, the Kremlin seems to do the same thing, which is a reaction to that action, but that action was a reaction to someone else, some other action, and so on. So this article comes from Ukrainska Pravda from Tuesday, October 4th, 2022. Kremlin prepared to wait for a new president of Ukraine to negotiate. Well, I think this is very misguided, the plan and the statement. Dmitry Peskov, the press secretary of the President of the Russian Federation, said that negotiations with Ukraine would have to wait for a change in the stance taken by the current president of the country, Volodymyr Zelensky, or for his successor. I think that's a misguided statement and a plan, because they shouldn't talk about change of stance in Zelensky's or the president, because that comes from Washington, D.C. So until something changes in Washington, D.C., you can have a dead person as the president of Ukraine. You still have to talk with Washington. You know, that's the way it is. And they know it. Quote from Peskov. Well, what can we say now? We will either wait for a change in the stance of the current president, or we will wait for a future president of Ukraine, who will change his position in favor of the Ukrainian people. Now you got that right. But what do you want? It's not Ukrainian for Ukrainians, it's orders from non-Ukrainians. So why would they really care about these guys? The big prize is Russia, not Ukraine. Ukraine is just a weapon they're going to use now. And if there's no more Ukrainian, they're going to use someone else, and someone else, and someone else. Details. This was Peskov's comment on the decree by President Volodymyr Zelensky implementing the decision by Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council dated September 30th. So the decree was on the impossibility of negotiating with Russian President Vladimir Putin. There was a decree? Really? And then on Ukraine's application to join NATO and on strengthening Ukraine's defense capabilities. Thus, the Kremlin made it clear that they are not going to end the war. Well, they could end it if you, agree with their conditions. The same here. The war could be ended in a second if Russia just said, okay, we're done. But Ukraine has to agree with that either. So it's not only, the Russians here who should decide, unless you just say, okay, do whatever you want to do to me and my country, and then, yeah. So Vladimir Zelensky stated before the latest stage of Russia's annexation of Ukrainian territory, that is that Kremlin made it clear that they are not going to end the war. So it says here that Vladimir Zelensky stated that before later stages of Russia's annexation of Ukraine's territories, the withdrawal of Russian troops from Ukraine was a condition for negotiations with the Russian Federation. So the reason, the condition is for the Russian Federation to go back to where it was before February 24th. Well, why didn't you do it then? You had 8 years, not only you, but your other weasels in between 2014 and 2022, I'm sorry. You had 8 years to negotiate, not to negotiate, to implement actually, because you negotiated in 2014, 2015. Remember Minsk Agreements 1, Minsk Agreements 2. But we want to negotiate? I mean, you lose your credibility. It's not like you go to a bank and you go over there and the bank says, okay, we do this, or I negotiate with the bank, they're going to give you the amount you need or you want, They're going to tell you about the interest. You're going to talk about the interest, negotiate. And when you agree and they agree, you sign. That means you agreed to those terms. Now, under those terms, they supply the money, right? And you, to buy the house, let's say it's a mortgage here, and you agree to pay, to make the payments on time or in time, not late. And if late, you're going to be penalized, okay? But you still pay. Now, if you stop paying, that means they will have little notes over there, the penalties for you being late. And they're going to take your house and they're going to sell it for you. And you're going to be killing your credit and so on. You're going to be kicked out of the house. So there are penalties for this. So you can't come, let's say, after you sign the papers, after 2 months, and say, hey, you know what? I want to renegotiate. Well, okay. Or no. It's up to the bank if they want to renegotiate it. And if they renegotiate it with you, your deal might not be so advantageous as it was before. But if you do this many times, every other week you want to renegotiate what you already negotiate, nobody wants to do deals with you. Because it means what I deal with you today, you change tomorrow. And then the next day. I mean, nobody was doing this. So when you had the Minsk agreements signed, fulfill those first, and then we're going to go from there. But you didn't even, fulfill your side of the deal. So this is what these guys wanted. Why should the Russian troops go back where they were before the 24th of February? You had that chance. It's gone. On September 30th, President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Ukraine is ready for negotiations with Russia, but only with another president of the Russian Federation, not with Vladimir Putin. On that day, Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council stated that impossibility of negotiating with Putin, and Zelensky approved this decision. Why? What's wrong with Putin? Is he too smart for you? Is he too, too Russian? Why with someone else? I mean, why someone else? Because you can't get what you want with this guy? Don't tell me, oh, because he's a criminal. Believe me, the Americans made and will make deals with criminals as we speak. So, criminals, they're still talking with some people in the Middle East, if you want me to be so evasive about it. You know what I'm talking about. So before that, Moscow had repeatedly accused Kiev of withdrawing from negotiations. But in fact, Russia did not seem prepared, that's the key word, prepared for compromises, refused to withdraw from the captured territories, and put forward ultimatums seeking the surrender of Ukraine. Well, why did they go and they started this costly and stupid operation? Because they had to fulfill 4 points. 4 points. Neutrality of Ukraine, right? Recognition of the territories as independent, with majority Russian population, the right of people's self-determination, United Nations Charter 1, right? Demilitarization, you're too close, I feel threatened. Imagine that you're going to have NATO in Ukraine. Do you think Russia should be okay? Yeah, that's what I say. You should be okay, Russia. No concerns, because we're the good guys. Okay, yeah. Your record doesn't show that. Right? Imagine Russians putting in, I don't know, in rockets in Cuba, or let's say in Mexico. Right there. Don't worry, we're good, man. No, of course there would be more security. Look what China does in the Solomon Islands. And the United States feels that security in balance, and they feel, you know where that is? Across the Pacific. So this is all BS here. And again, Peskov, it's not Zelensky, it's Washington, and not even Washington. There are forces way beyond Washington, D.C. or London, or these are just the heads that we see. All right, not the guys behind. It's not, the guys behind are based on interest, financial interest, finance. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.